from Pittsburg, and Brenda hit the nail on the head. You really have to do your homework, and you have to go into any kind of negotiation with the idea that we're all servants of the city, and the people in the city don't know the difference between the funding for the library and the funding for anything else at the city, any other services. And so we're all in this together. When I was first hired, my very first day of work, I went over to City Hall and introduced myself to the city manager, which to me was a no-brainer. But he told me that my predecessor, who'd been gone a while, had never come over to introduce herself. And I thought, okay, I think I see why there were bad feelings between the library and the city. It was interesting to hear that from Brenda, because we had a lot of that too, because we had a building project that really divided the community. A lot of people thought we should expand the library, and other people, mostly the library board, thought we should have a whole new building. And so there were some really bridges that had been burned. One of the things that I recommend is that you attend commission meetings. Like Brenda said, twice a month. You may not have the time to do that, but when you're sitting there in the audience and you're not asking them for anything, you're going to learn a lot about what's going on with the other departments, and the other department heads who are also at that meeting are going to get to know you. Now, if you're a small enough town, you know all these people anyway, but in Pittsburgh that's not the case, and I was brand new, and I just decided that I didn't want to be out in left field, and that I probably had some bridges to build, and so I started going to commission meetings. And in fact, I had the chief of police say, I don't know, why do you come to commission meetings? You know, you're pretty regular. I said, well, I just want to know what's going on in the city. I don't sit on any of the city committees, the staff committees, and so I want to be involved. She said, that's a good idea. I might start doing that too. Well, now they're all required to, and I hope it's not my fault. They all have to go to all the commission meetings. So I got to know city staff. Because we'd had this big expansion with no increase in income, we had a 4 mil levy. I knew I was going to have to ask for an increase in the mill levy. So I went to the head of the finance department, and I said, help me understand. Now this was after I'd been there. Well, actually, let me back up. At some point, shortly after I got there, the city manager said, don't come and ask us for more money until I see you raising some money for the library. He said, when we did this big expansion, the Parks and Rec head went out and got money for a bigger pool than we were going to be able to build. And somebody else went out and got money for something else, and the library didn't get any money at all. They just sat back and waited for us to get the tax, give them the tax money. Well, that wasn't true. The library had raised money, but that was his perception. And so I said, I hear you. I'll see what I can do. So the board didn't feel like they could raise money, so we started a foundation. There are lots of ways you can raise money, and if you're bringing money in that isn't tax money, make sure the city people know that you are doing that you are supplementing your budget with this money, because they felt like we were just sitting there with our hands out. And so we had to show them that we were making an effort to raise money and not just depending on the tax bill. So once we had money coming in through our foundation, I felt that it was the time to think about asking for an increase in the mill. And I talked to the head of the finance department, and I said, what's a good timeline? I want to share information with the commission, and I want to do it well before they're planning the budget. So he said, well, I probably talk to them in February, March. I said, great, thank you. So backing up from then, in October, I wrote a justification for asking for the increase, sent that out to the board by email and said, give me your feedback. This is the information I'm going to present to the commission. I want to share it with our foundation board and have some of them at the meeting when I talk to the commissioners. So I want your feedback as board members. So they gave me their feedback. I sent and this was done by email. I sent it out then to our foundation board and talked to some of them, and so the president and the vice president of our foundation board were sitting in the audience when I was on the agenda to speak to the commissioners, and I made sure to introduce them when I went up. I said, I'd like to introduce the chair of our foundation and the vice chair, and they both are prominent in the community and have done a lot for the community, and the commissioners knew that. So they didn't have to say anything, they were just there to send a really strong message. And so I gave my presentation, and I discovered at that point that what the commissioners really want is lots of data. They need to, and they need to discuss it. While the meeting's going on, while the camera is on them, you know, we air our commission meetings on local channel, and there are an awful lot of people that watch that, surprisingly enough, because the next day they'll say, oh, I saw you on the commission meeting. And I found out then, which, because I thought, you guys are meeting this today, you know, I'm just giving you, but they need to say, I've read your data and I see this, this, and this. You know, I see you're asking, and they need to bring these points up that they know their constituents are concerned about, because they're going to get feedback. If they raise taxes, they're going to have people calling and saying, why did you do it? And so they do a lot of conversation just to have it out in the open. And it surprised me. I thought they were, you know, talking it to death, but they weren't. It was something that I had to learn, that this is their one time to, you know, get the guy who's writing the newspaper article to hear something and put it in the paper. So they asked me questions about the data, and I had, as much as I thought would be useful, I brought it along because this is a long time ago. I had the average cost to each taxpayer for library services in 2003 if we were at 4 mil, 5 mil, 5.5 mil, or 6 mil. And I had a table that compared us to libraries of similar size in southeast Kansas that showed what their mill levy was and if they had an employee benefit fund. And we were low man on the totem pole. All of the others had a higher mill levy, or Derby had the same mill levy, but they had an employee benefit fund, which we didn't have. So it was pretty obvious to them that Pittsburg, which is the biggest city in southeast Kansas, had the lowest mill levy for the library. And that's always, if you can show how pitiful you are, that's really because they don't want you guys, you know, they want their city to be the worst in a comparable situation. So, and at one point, one of them said, so, what do you need from us today? And I said, nothing. I just wanted to present this. I will be coming back when you're working on the budget, and I will, you know, at the appropriate time, and I will be asking for an increase to 6 mil, from 4 mil to 6 mil. And I said, I don't need the full 6 mil. That's something we can work to gradually, but we do need to go up to 5 mil because this, this, and this. You know, I gave my argument, and that was it. They thanked me, and so then, of course, I had to go back later, present some of the same information. They talked it out again at length, and they voted for the 6 mil. But it's a case of building those relationships and giving them lots of information and working respectfully with them. At the time, I was ready to go over in March and just give the presentation. Somebody said to me, well, when we were building this edition, we told the commission that we were going to need more money, and you just go over and tell them that now we've told them that we need more money and they need to give it to us. And I thought, I don't think I'm going to do it that way. You know, so like Brenda said, you know, build those relationships. Just, go over there and be there. You know, if you're not real comfortable with them, just show up at commission meetings. Pretty soon, they're so used to having you around, they forget that you weren't always there. But you've got to build those bridges. It's not their responsibility. It's, I think, our responsibility to say, we're part of this city too.